The massive lion was airborne, all four paws extended into empty sky, his dark mane streaming behind him like a war banner. Below him, nothing but air and the impossible drop to the crater floor far, far below. Above him, wings beat frantically as the martial eagle struggled to gain altitude, the small golden bundle clutched in her talons, twisting and crying out. Atlas did not think about the fall. He did not think about the jagged rocks or the certain death that waited if he miscalculated. His amber eyes were locked on only one thing, the small, terrified face of his cub disappearing into the African sky. In that frozen moment between earth and heaven, between life and whatever came next, the great lion was no longer king of anything. He was simply a father who had already lost everything once and would not, could not lose again. But this is not where our story begins. If this story moves you, please consider subscribing. Together we can celebrate the extraordinary bonds that make the animal kingdom so miraculous. 3 months earlier, the golden light of dawn spread across the Ngorongoro crater like liquid honey. Atlas stood overlooking the crater floor, his magnificent form silhouetted against the brightening sky. At 5 years old, he was in his prime. Beside him, her smaller frame pressed against his shoulder, was Nayla. Her coat gleamed like polished gold, and her amber eyes gazed out over their territory with quiet contentment. They had been together for 2 years, an eternity in the often violent world of lion relationships. What neither of them knew was that this golden morning would be their last together. The sound came first, a deep, rumbling bellow that echoed off the crater walls. Buffalo. The massive herd had been disturbed, and their alarm calls sent ripples of tension through every predator within earshot. Atlas felt Nala shift beside him, her muscles tensing. They had not eaten well in 3 days, and there was something else now, something that made the hunger more urgent. She was carrying his cubs. The hunt began well. They moved with the fluid coordination of partners who had hunted together countless times. Atlas would scatter the herd, Nayla would single out a target. It had worked before. It should have worked again. But the crater was full of surprises. When Nayla launched herself onto a young bull's back, several massive cows made a decision that would doom her. They turned back. They charged. By the time Atlas reached her, she lay on her side, breathing shallow and labored, her golden coat matted with blood. He touched his nose to hers. Her eyes opened, and for a moment he saw recognition, saw something that might have been love, or might have been goodbye. Her flank contracted once, twice, 3 times, and then she was still. Male lions do not cry, but the sound that came from Atlas's throat was hollow, broken, a king's lament for a queen lost to the casual cruelty of the wild. Near midday, he heard it, faint mewing coming from thick grass 20 meters away. In those final contractions, Nayla had given birth. In the grass, he found 2 tiny shapes. The first squirmed vigorously, his cries loud and demanding. The second was silent, motionless, born but never to live. Atlas touched his nose to the living cub, and the tiny creature immediately turned toward the warmth, mouth open, seeking. Something ancient stirred in his chest. This was his blood, his son, all that remained of Nayla. By every rule of lion society, he should walk away. Male lions do not raise cubs. A single male with a newborn had no chance of survival. The cub would starve without milk. Nature's logic was clear. Leave the cub, move on, find a new pride, start again.
Atlas picked up the tiny mewling bundle in his massive jaws, gentle as falling snow, and began to walk. The first 2 days were a nightmare. The cub, whom Atlas would eventually think of as Keto, cried almost constantly, a plea for milk that Atlas could not provide, for a mother who would never return. On the third day, desperate, Atlas made a decision born of pure instinct. Where there were nursing mothers, there would be milk. He approached a zebra herd at dusk, making himself as small and non-threatening as a 500-pound lion could be, the mewling cub held carefully in his jaws. The zebras panicked, but Atlas did not chase. He simply sat 20 meters from the water and gently placed Quito on the ground between his enormous paws. One of the zebra mares, her udder swollen with milk for a foal taken by hyenas the week before, hesitated. Her maternal instinct, confused by the sound of distress, warred with her terror. She came closer. And in a moment that defied every rule of the wild, the zebra allowed the cub to nurse. It could not last, but that single feeding bought Atlas time. Over the following weeks, Atlas discovered that the crater held secrets. Places where small prey bred, where a clever lion could make quick kills without leaving his cub vulnerable. And there were moments, stolen between the constant demands of survival, where Atlas could simply be with his son. When Quito finally opened his eyes on the 10th day, revealing cloudy blue irises that would eventually turn amber, Atlas found himself staring into those tiny eyes and seeing not just his son, but a reason to keep going. As the weeks passed, Quito grew, and Atlas, patient in ways that surprised even himself, was always there. Every morning, as the sun rose over the crater's eastern rim, Atlas would take Quito to a particular spot, a flat expanse of rock surrounded by soft grass. Here, while Atlas rested, Quito would play, chasing butterflies and stalking grasshoppers. On the morning that would change everything, the sky was a perfect blue. Atlas lay stretched in the sun, watching Quito chase a butterfly. The cub was 2 months old now, his legs strong, his movements coordinated. Against all odds, they had survived. The shadow fell across Quito so quickly that the cub had no time to react. One moment he was standing in bright sunlight. The next, massive talons closed around his small body and lifted him into the air. The cub's scream shattered the peaceful morning. Atlas's head snapped up. His eyes found Quito immediately, already 10 meters in the air and rising fast in the grip of the largest martial eagle he had ever seen. The bird's wingspan was nearly 2 meters across, her yellow eyes fixed forward, focused only on the high cliffs where her nest waited. For one frozen second, Atlas felt the universe collapse to a single, unbearable point. Not again. Not again. The roar that tore from his throat was primal, a sound of anguish and fury and desperate determination. And then Atlas was running. The eagle was heading for the cliffs, for the sheer rock faces that rose 600 meters from the crater floor. Atlas followed, his eyes locked on his son, his mind empty of everything except the need to reach him. Male lions do not climb, but fathers, it seemed, would attempt anything. The rock was hot beneath Atlas's paws as he stared up at the towering cliff face. He had never considered rocks as something to climb, but somewhere up there, growing more distant with each passing second, Quito was still crying.
Atlas placed his right front paw on a small ledge. The rock was rough, volcanic, and his claws found purchase. He pushed upward, bringing his hind legs up, finding footholds by instinct. For a moment he clung there, 3 meters off the ground, every muscle trembling. Then he reached up with his left paw and climbed higher. The first 20 meters were the worst. Every instinct screamed at him to stop. Lions do not climb cliffs. This violated fundamental rules. But above him, Keto's scent still lingered in the air, pulling Atlas upward as surely as any rope. Blood began to appear on the rock where he climbed. His paw pads were not designed for this. The volcanic rock tore at the soft tissue between his toe pads. Each placement sent jolts of pain up his legs, pain that Atlas acknowledged and ignored. At 40 meters, he encountered an overhang. For long minutes, Atlas hung there, his mind working through an impossible problem. He stretched his right paw as far as it would reach, found a crack above the overhang, and pulled. His hind legs swung free for terrifying seconds, and then his claws found stone again. He was past it. At 50 meters, sweat matted his coat. His breathing came in great gasps. His shoulders screamed in protest, but he climbed. At 55 meters, he found a small ledge and looked up. The eagle's nest was visible now, perhaps 5 meters above him. So close. After everything, he was so close. He began the final climb, and it was here that his body began to truly fail. Twice his grip slipped. Twice he hung by 3 paws while the world spun below him. And twice he forced himself to find new holds and continue. At the 60-meter mark, he pulled himself up and over the edge. For a moment, he simply lay there, every muscle shaking. He had done it. The eagle saw him. She was enormous, her hooked beak designed to tear flesh, her talons the size of Atlas's own claws. And in the center of the nest, partially hidden, Atlas saw Keto. His son was alive. For a long moment, lion and eagle stared at each other. Atlas stood slowly and took one step forward. The eagle mantled, spreading her massive wings, a clear warning. Atlas took another step. His roar when it came was weaker than usual, but the intention was pure and clear. "Give me my son." The eagle was brave, but she had never faced a male lion. Some instinct told her this battle was not worth fighting. She sidestepped, moving away from Keto. Atlas reached into the nest, his massive paw surprisingly gentle as it closed around his son. Keto immediately pressed against his father's leg, making small sounds of relief. For just a moment, Atlas allowed himself to close his eyes. They had made it. And then the eagle made her decision. She surged forward, her wings spreading wide as she launched herself not at Atlas, but at the small bundle he carried. Atlas turned his body, putting himself between the eagle and his son, and took the full force of her attack on his shoulder and flank. Her talons raked across his skin, tearing through fur and flesh. Pain exploded across his back, but he did not drop Keto. The eagle pulled away, preparing for another strike. She would not stop. She would harry them until either he dropped the cub or fell from the ledge, which meant that down was not an option. Atlas turned his head and looked away from the cliff face. Beyond the ledge, the crater opened up in vast space. And there, perhaps 30 meters from the base of the cliff and 15 meters down from his current position, he could see something that made his heart race with desperate hope. A pool. A deep pool of crater water. Deep enough, perhaps. The eagle was coming for a third attack. Atlas had only seconds to decide. Above him, Keto's eyes met his, trusting completely, believing with absolute faith that his father would protect him. And in those small eyes, Atlas found his answer. He did not think about the distance. He did not think about the hard ground that surrounded the pool. He thought only about Keto, about Nala, about love, and how it could make the impossible become merely difficult. The eagle's talons reached for them. Atlas positioned his hind legs against the rock face. He took one breath, 2. 30 meters out, 15 meters down, deep water or death. For Cato, for love, for the only thing in the world that mattered. Atlas pushed off with every remaining ounce of strength and leaped into empty air. Time became strange in that moment. Atlas felt the world spin around him, sky and stone trading places. The wind roared past his ears. Gravity accelerated his massive body downward and outward in a trajectory that was either perfectly calculated or utterly doomed. Cato made no sound during the fall. Perhaps he felt safe, even here, because his father held him. Atlas curled his body instinctively, protecting Cato with his chest and shoulders, trying to make himself into a shield. His eyes squeezed shut. They hit the water like a meteor. The impact drove the air from Atlas's lungs. The sound was thunderous. Water closed over them with crushing pressure, driving them down, down, down into darkness. But his jaws never loosened. Atlas's chest burned for air. His muscles screamed. But he kicked for the surface, his powerful hind legs beating against water that felt thick as mud. His head broke the surface just as his consciousness began to slip, and he sucked in air with desperate, gasping breaths. Swimming to shore was the longest journey of Atlas's life. Every stroke was agony, but he swam on, keeping Cato's head above water. His paws found mud, then stones, then solid ground. Atlas dragged himself from the pool and made it 3 meters before his legs gave out completely. He collapsed onto the warm earth, still holding Cato carefully in his jaws. For long moments, both lion and cub simply lay there, water pooling around their bodies. Atlas's sides heaved, his paws were shredded. The eagle's talons had left deep furrows across his shoulder. But Cato was alive. Atlas finally released his son, and the small cub immediately crawled onto his father's chest, soaked and shaking, but whole. Atlas curled his head around to look at his son, and something fundamental shifted. This was no longer simply a male lion who had decided to care for a cub. This was a father who had defied nature itself, who had climbed the impossible and leaped into empty air and survived the unsurvivable. All for love. The days that followed were difficult. Atlas's injuries required time to heal. They survived on scavenged meals, on desperation and determination. But slowly, painfully, Atlas recovered. And Cato grew. The trauma seemed to have little lasting effect beyond making him even more devoted to his father. The bond between them became something that the other animals of the crater could see and sense. Years would pass. Cato would grow into a magnificent male. He would eventually challenge Atlas for dominance, as nature demanded. But that challenge would be gentle, more ritual than real combat, because some bonds transcended even the most fundamental drives. And in his later years, when Cato had cubs of his own, he would prove to be a devoted father in ways that confused other lions. Male lions did not raise their cubs, but Cato did, because he had learned from the greatest teacher. The sun sets over the Ngorongoro crater every evening, painting the ancient caldera in shades of gold and crimson. The endless cycle of life and death continues, as it has for millions of years. But if you listen carefully, if you watch closely, you might catch a glimpse of something rare. You might see a male lion, his body bearing the permanent scars of an impossible climb and an impossible leap, walking beside his grown son.
You might see the gentle way they touch noses, the absolute trust in their every interaction. And you might understand that in a world governed by tooth and claw, love remains the most powerful force of all. Strong enough to climb cliffs that should not be climbed, brave enough to make leaps that should not be survived, fierce enough to defy nature itself. This is the story of Atlas, the lion who became a father when nature said he should not, who climbed when lions should never climb, who leaped when the only sensible choice was to stay on solid ground, who survived because failure was not an option, because his son needed him, because love demanded nothing less than everything. Their story reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it for those we love. That sacrifice is not loss when it is given freely for our children. That the word impossible is simply a challenge waiting to be overcome by a parent's fierce, unbreakable love. We are all capable of such love. We all have cliffs we can climb, leaps we can take, impossibilities we can overcome when the ones we love need us. Atlas answered that question on a cliff face in Africa, his son crying above him, his paws bleeding, his body breaking. He answered it with every agonizing meter climbed, with a leap into empty air. And his answer was simply this: for love, anything is possible. The crater remembers, the wild remembers, and now you remember too.